Future Warrior, the Mars Campaign. Chapter 7. They inserted close to the front in very low-flying LTTs, the city showing the effects of the bitter fighting and heavy shelling, with many of the domed roofs being caved in and the streets being lined with rubble. Once down, a black Terra Nova Warthog APC moved them through the shattered cityscape and deployed them a few kilometers short of the front lines, as the risk from enemy anti-tank teams was still too high for the thinly armored six-wheel battlefield taxi to safely transport the men any further. As he exited out of the Warthog's rear door, Stalker's first impressions were of wisps of smoke passing through ruined buildings and the crunch of debris underfoot. As he looked around, it reminded him of Elysium Prime in many ways, but Tharsis was far noisier. A pair of missiles streaked overhead, heading in the direction of the Red Legion lines. Their passing followed shortly after by the distant rumble of the impacts and a slight shudder through the ground, the noise temporarily drowning out the sporadic sounds of distant small arms fire. The men of Epsilon deployed to either side of the street and advanced in two 7-man staggered columns, one headed by Big D, the other by Stalker. Their first task was to move up and take over a Praetorian position, and then wait for their supporting armor to arrive before going over to the offensive. They advanced through several ruined city blocks, D communicating with the Praetorian unit's commander on the TACnet as they moved, getting the current situation and warning him of their approach. Stalker froze and signaled a halt when he saw deep purple armored figures up ahead, behind rubble and other makeshift barricades. Big D had also seen them. "Falcon, this is Stretch. We have you in sight. Request permission to advance." The reply was immediate. "Stretch, this is Falcon Ops. You are clear to advance. Watch for fire from the buildings on the far left." They moved up, keeping a close eye on the high-rise buildings to the left of the front line, arriving at the Praetorian positions without incident. As Stalker paused by a group of Praetorians, he noticed to the front of the rubble and debris that the Praetorians were using as cover there were a large number of red-dressed bodies. A Praetorian soldier saw his gaze and commented, "They tried to push us back earlier this morning. You see Tiberius there?" He pointed to a soldier close by whose helmetless head was heavily bandaged. He copped a large caliber round to the side of his helmet. The second soldier, named Tiberius, held up his ruined EEA helmet for Stalker to see. It was almost split in half. The Praetorians' EEA was royal purple in color. Unlike all the assault divisions, the color and styling were unique to the division. In the case of the Praetorians, their purple EEA helmets sported a stylized golden wreath, and inscribed in golden Latin on their EEA's chest plates was the Praetorians' divisional motto, "Strength and Honor." After a few minutes, the Praetorians began to pull out. "Good luck, guys," the first soldier said as he began to leave. Stalker nodded and watched him go, reading the man's name written in gold on his armored back as he left. It read, Jovinus. Stalker and the rest of Epsilon held position, scanning the ruined city in front of them for any sign of movement. The Terra Nova was due to switch to offensive operations within the hour, and everyone was hoping the promised armor support would arrive before then. Big D, who had been busy on the TACnet, suddenly broke the silence, friendlies coming in to the rear. Stalker stole a look and had to stop himself from shouting a warning as coming down the road, skimming on their ion thrusters, were two Striders, Terra Nova Striders, painted in midnight black. The Striders gave a wave as they passed, and without slowing down boosted over the rubble barricades and the heads of the surprised men manning it. Landing on the far side, they split up around either side of a wrecked building and disappeared from sight. Stalker noticed that they were Griffin-patterned Striders, a type favored by the Terra Nova and the other assault divisions due to their low profile and formidable close combat weapons, which included a powerful multi-barrel cannon, plasma gun, flamethrower, and shoulder-mounted cluster rockets. Stalker was interrupted shortly after by the sound of powerful engines, and was glad to see the menacing shape of two Devastator main battle tanks, MBTs, rolling down the street behind them, their turrets covering the left and right sides of the street. Big D moved into the road, and after signaling the tanks, walked around to the rear of the lead Devastator and plugged the secure net cable into his arm socket, so he could converse with the vehicle commander. After a few minutes, D signaled the rest of the unit, "It's go time, people. We're moving forward. provide close protection for the tanks. No answer was necessary, Stalker and the rest of the unit getting to their feet and moving out. The Devastators rumbled forward slowly, so as to allow the supporting ground troops to advance with them. The tanks crushed the barricade that had blocked the road, and with 7 black armor guardians on each side, the column moved down the street. The big tanks' turrets continuing to cover opposite sides of the street as they looked for resistance, seemingly daring someone or something to try to stop them. With a sickening series of wet crunches, the MBDs rolled over the scattered red bodies and swung left around the high-rise building before turning to proceed down a wide street. A sign dangling from a bent light pole read, "Terraforming Precinct." As Stalker moved with them, his rifle up and scanning the passing buildings, he took stock of his surroundings. Every building had shattered windows. Most buildings were burnt or broken by artillery fire, and plumes of smoke and dust swirled on a light breeze. They had gone perhaps a kilometer when there was a sudden whoosh sound. "RPG," called one of the soldiers on the left, and Stalker saw an anti-tank rocket coming from a building to his left, streaking for the lead Devastator at blinding speed. On board the Devastator, the advanced MBT's automated defense systems reacted, and on the left side of the turret, a small barrel on an automated mini-turret swung to face the incoming projectile, guided by the tank's onboard radar system. As the projectile closed to within several meters, the system fired a special shotgun cartridge of uranium-depleted pellets that formed a 1-meter square virtual wall of shot against the incoming projectile. The two met at a combined speed of over 2,000 feet per second, and with a flash and loud explosion, the heat warhead of the rocket exploded, showering the tank with shrapnel, which merely bounced off its thick armor. Inside the lead Devastator, the gunner's TAC display lit up and plotted the likely origin of the RPG. The turret swung rapidly to the left, and with a sharp crack and spout of flame, the tank's 140mm L-66 cannon fired a high explosive fragmentation, or HEF, round towards the building at the sizzling speed of 2,500 feet per second. It hit a wall, just below a window, and for a fraction of a second, nothing happened as the round's time delay fuse allowed it to penetrate the building. Then the building itself seemed to bulge outwards before, in apocalyptic fashion, it exploded, sending chunks of plascrete flying, and a cloud of gray-reddish dust rolled outwards in every direction. From dozens of windows on both sides of the street, flashes of gunfire erupted, and the small black shapes of grenades tumbled through the air from above. Grenade. Stalker dived to the ground as several grenades went off in quick succession with distinctive crumps. Inside the Devastators, the vehicle commanders flicked a switch marked MG to the auto setting and then resumed seeking and ordering the gunner onto targets and giving the driver directions to keep advancing. At the flick of the switch, the remote weapon station, RWS, on the top of the massive turret, looking like 2 small turrets stacked on top of each other, each equipped with an independently targeted 15mm machine gun, went to fully automatic mode and began to seek and engage targets in the buildings, 2 at a time. Using advanced target acquisition software, which designated target priority based on factors such as range, rate of fire, angle of attack, direction of fire, type of fire, and proximity to friendly forces, the machine guns could be left to engage targets at will, leaving the tank commander free to do his primary job of commanding the tank. Stalker sprung up, firing a long burst from his rifle as he did, and moved forward to keep up with the tanks. Firing seemed to be coming from almost every direction. The Devastators shook off the barrage and rolled forward, firing into buildings as they went. Stalker grabbed a grenade, and without changing its default time setting of 5 seconds, hurled it into a second-story window. The resulting explosion sending a red figure tumbling out of the window and crashing bodily on the road with a sickening thud. The Devastators were systematically leveling the entire street, and building after building was silenced by the sheer weight of firepower delivered from their main guns. More RPGs continued to be fired, this time from multiple angles, but they were intercepted by the tank's smart defenses, the sharp crack of the defensive shotgun system registering in Stalker's helmet. Ahead, several Reds dashed across the road. Stalker swung his rifle onto them and let off a burst, cutting down two before they could disappear behind a bombed-out building. Two of the men from Omega 2-1 were equipped as a heavy weapons team, and Stalker could see that they had now set up their compact 20mm cannon and were engaging enemies on the rooftops, the heavy tracer rounds flashing diagonally across the street. Stalker ducked reflexively as a large missile streaked only a few feet over his head and into the building directly behind him, the blast knocking him to the ground and sending dust and debris everywhere. The lead Devastator's defensive system having let the missile pass after calculating that it wouldn't score a hit on either of the tanks, and that to engage it would endanger the supporting assault troops. As he staggered to his feet, his head swimming, Stalker saw the source of the missile, a Wasp anti-tank vehicle, which was now reversing behind a building some distance up the road. The lead Devastator had seen it too and swung its cannon onto it just as it disappeared from sight. The gunner in the Devastator, at the push of a button, selected and loaded a high-velocity armor-piercing penetrator, or HVAP round, and fired. The round covered the distance in a fraction of a second and hit the building. It then passed clean through the building, its arming mechanism not having sensed an impact with something significantly dense as armor, before scoring a direct hit on the still reversing Wasp. Using pure kinetic energy, the projectile punched through the Wasp's flank armor and a millisecond later detonated inside the crew compartment, shredding the occupants and leaving it a smoking coffin. The rate of enemy fire was beginning to dwindle as the sheer weight of firepower coming from the Devastators and Terra Nova assault troops began to tell, the street looking like the very picture of destruction. "Cease fire. I said cease fire, goddammit." The street slowly descended into silence. The Devastators had stopped in the street abreast of each other, turrets facing opposite directions, each tank covering a 180-degree arc, still looking for threats. "Stalker, go have a look and take some company." As D ordered another pair to check the other side of the street, Stalker signaled the man nearest to him and moved out with him close behind. With the firing now stopped, the first thing Stalker noticed was sounds of combat coming from all over the city, come close, some distant. It was an all too familiar sound. Clearly the rest of the attacking forces were also meeting resistance as they pushed deeper into the city. Climbing through a half-destroyed building, Stalker made his way up to the second floor, or more accurately what was left of it, and using his rifle took a look. He couldn't see any enemy movement. Other than a dead red twitching in the rubble by his feet, the surrounding area seemed deserted as graveyard. "Looks all quiet," Stalker said over the commnet. But as he continued watching, Stalker caught a glimpse of something red moving about a kilometer down the street, running parallel to theirs. It looked like a tracked APC of some sort, painted the now familiar red. It stopped and appeared to be collecting infantry. "I've got a red APC in sight. Looks like the Reds are pulling back." Stalker paused as he spied something else. "Stand by." What he saw brought a smile to his face. A jet-black Strider had just emerged from a side street close to the red APC. As Stalker watched, it extended its right arm around the corner of the building, spying on the enemy troops who were now almost all inside the APC. When the last man had entered, the Strider suddenly burst from cover and fired its shoulder-mounted cluster rockets. The APC was tossed like a toy and exploded violently. The Strider boosted smoothly over the wreckage, and skating on its ion thrusters disappeared from sight. Stalker guessed that the enemy had probably allowed the Striders past unopposed, not wanting to reveal their positions, thinking that the tanks and Terra Nova were the bigger threat. Stalker almost laughed at the idea. Big mistake. Almost nothing could wreak more havoc than Striders once they got behind the lines. As he stepped down through the destroyed building, Stalker noticed something sticking out of his shoulder. Grabbing it, he saw it was a 2-inch-long piece of shrapnel lodged firmly in his shoulder plate. As he pulled it out, Stalker looked at the rest of his armor. It was peppered with shrapnel. "Damn," he said to himself. That missile had been close. Stalker walked over to D, who looked him up and down. "You look like shit," said D, fixing him with a stare. "Thanks, Dad." D chuckled. "Try to keep your EEA in good condition. They're expensive, you know." Yeah. So is my education, and look where that got me. Into one of these damn suits." D let out a rare laugh. "All right, let's move out. The man wants that terraforming facility." Stalker turned and headed back to the opposite side of the street, to where the others were crouching behind some rubble. In spite of the ferocity of the short firefight, everyone, despite a few minor injuries, appeared fit to fight, and D, moving past one of the devastators, signaled the advance. Stalker could see the edge of one of the immense atmospheric converters in the distance, its monolithic form rising above the skyline like the side of a gray man-made mountain, which stretched upwards through the clouds of acrid smoke that hung over the city. The division's objective was to push to that converter and, preferably without destroying it, take it from the enemy. That sounds like fun, Stalker thought, as he looked at the distant monolith. They had moved onwards through several intersections when, without warning, there was a sharp cry of alarm, and the man, next to Stalker, was lifted clear off his feet. Stalker managed to spin around just in time to see a red-painted Strider boost past him, a black armored soldier clasped in one of its hands, the other hand holding a long-barreled rail rifle. The tanks began to react, their turrets turning towards the onrushing Strider, but they weren't fast enough. The Strider boosted between them, firing as it passed, peppering the rear of the tanks, before with a flick of its arm it threw the Terra Nova soldier it was holding over the nearest building, his cries filling the comm net before being suddenly cut off. It then launched a salvo of cluster rockets, most of which were intercepted by the Devastator's defenses, while the rockets that got through and scored hits did little obvious damage to the thickly armored tanks. As it disappeared behind a building, one of the Devastators got off a shot which passed by the Strider, missing it by a few feet. There had been almost no time to react, the attack being over in seconds. "Perimeter, 75 meters move," boomed D's voice, and everyone was startled from their shocked trances and scattered into buildings and nearby rubble as they fanned out to take cover. One of the Devastators was smoking from its rear and had developed an awful screeching sound in its engine. D jogged over to take a look and talk to the crew through the secure net. Stalker joined him. "Defensive systems are down. Radar is down. We have main power, but I don't know for how long." "Shit," said D. "Where did that bastard come from?" A call came over the comm net. One of the men had located the soldier grabbed by the Strider in the next street. He was dead, every bone in his body broken. "He's trying to pin us down. We have to keep moving. This girl might make it to the converter if we're lucky, but we can't take another series of hits like that. Well, provide flank protection. You watch the rear and have your mate watch the frontal arc. Sounds like a plan." D disconnected. "Let's go Terra Nova. We're moving on." D went to jog back across to the other side of the street. "Hey, D might need this." D spun and caught the cylindrical tube Stalker had thrown to him. "Don't miss." D gave a quick wave, holding the slap and a tank rocket. "I knew I brought you for something, Stalker," and with that the two separated back to opposite sides of the street. As Stalker ran, he gave orders. "Defensive formation, left flank, form up on the tanks. Common, let's go, people." He also removed the grenade magazine from his M503 and replaced it with one of his 250mm heat grenade magazines and pumped the action, cocked, locked, and ready to rock. Stalker tossed the other to a nearby soldier, who gave him a big thumbs up and locked it into his rifle. Stalker then grabbed his remaining slap launcher and extended the tube and flipped up the sights before shouldering it, making sure it was ready to fire at a moment's notice. The Devastators began to rumble forward, turrets facing opposite directions up and down the street, the damaged vehicle shuddering a little as it moved, making it look almost hesitant. As they moved, the Terra Nova assault troops kept pace, moving from cover to cover, their weapons up, looking between and above buildings, their nerves like coiled springs, waiting for the appearance of the enemy they all knew was out there. They had advanced about 2 tense kilometers when the tank commander in the lead Devastator sighted something. The commander signaled D, and as it rolled to a stop, D walked behind and plugged into the secure net. "We've detected an IR heat signature about a click ahead. 3rd level. Take a look." On D's HUD, the image changed to the vision of the forward-looking IR sensor on the Devastator. It showed a cluster of heat signatures on a 5-story dome-roofed building. 3rd level. Probably a scouting team relaying information to Red HQ and that damn Strider. They won't want to give their position away. Sound about right. We're lucky. Before leaving Earth, we had the new MK-6 IR unit fitted. Otherwise, it's doubtful we would have picked them up. Send him a gift from the Terra Nova, will you? Anything for one of the 10-unit commander. The Mk6IR unit had been developed for the very latest types of mechs, and not only used IR, but also included an integrated mass spectrometer to detect the density of organic matter in a way not that dissimilar to the radiation density site on an M11 rail rifle that used radiation to measure organic matter's moisture content. As Big D moved away, the Devastator started slowly forward, swinging its L-66 cannon up and left, and letting fly a HEF round at the cluster of IR signatures. The distant building shattered like it was made out of glass, half of it collapsing onto the road. The Advance rolled slowly on, and as he passed the plascrete rubble on the road, Stalker saw a couple of broken-looking red bodies amongst it. They had taken its eyes, but the Strider was still out there. There was a terrific screech of metal. Stalker spun and saw, to his utter amazement, a Red Legion Strider standing on top of the lead tank. It had taken a risk and boosted high above the city skyline before coming down right on top of the lead Devastator. Cluster rockets arced outwards from two shoulder pods and smashed into the buildings on both sides of the street, showering everything and everyone with chunks of debris. Stalker was knocked off his feet and felt his body through the EEA, being battered by all manner of airborne debris and rubble. Stalker dragged himself out from under what seemed like half a building and, fumbling slightly in his haste, grabbed his slap launcher. And still lying prone, sighted on the Strider, which was busy tearing the remote weapon station off the turret top of the lead Devastator while firing its rail rifle at the second tank, which was desperately trying to bring its main gun to bear. Stalker fired hurriedly at the center of the Strider, but his aim was off, and the rocket struck the raised arm of the Strider, shattering it. The Strider swung its rail rifle and pointed it directly at Stalker. At that exact moment, another slap rocket struck it squarely in the chest and sent it crashing to Earth next to the Devastators, its rail shot going sizzling over Stalker's head. Stalker was on his feet in a second, and despite his bruised body resisting, began pumping 50mm heat grenades into the fallen Strider. The Strider began to get up, shrugging off the impacts, when with a roar the lead Devastator accelerated and with a rending screech of metal crushed the Strider under its 90-ton weight, then reversed and ran over again. Stalker closed in on the crushed Strider, keeping it under the watchful eye of his grenade launcher. He also moved in, sound off. Bravo Epsilon 2-1 clear, all clear, called Stalker to D's order, and surprisingly, he was followed by another 12 replies, including D's. Alpha Epsilon 2-1 clear, all clear. The Strider was completely crushed and blood was seeping from joins in its crumpled cockpit. Keep the perimeter up. There could be more of them out there, ordered D, and the battered-looking Terra Nova troops, looking gray from the dust, spread out a little further while Stalker and D assessed the damage. Damn, that guy was good. Yeah, but your shot was better, D. I'm glad you didn't wait any longer. Well, I thought about it, but then I decided there were too many Reds around here for me to kill all by myself. Stalker laughed and slapped Big D on his armored shoulder, raising a small cloud of dust off his burly frame. The crew of the rear Devastator had bailed out, with the steel behemoth now completely inoperable, but with the exception of a few scratches, scrapes, and frayed nerves, the crew were all unhurt. The lead tank was still running, but had lost its RWS, which had been torn off by the Strider, and also had suspension damage which limited its speed to a crawl. As they considered what to do, there was a sudden intense bright flash, followed by a shower of sparks and electricity at the front of the remaining Devastator. "We're taking fire!" screamed the tank commander. "Where's it coming from?" asked D, crouching behind the tank's rear. "We've lost all visual feed, all optical systems are fried. We're completely blind." Stalker stood up and looked around the left side of the tank. Then he saw it, coming down the street. Dead center was another Red Strider, this one wielding a vicious-looking long sniper rifle in one hand and a powerful plasma rifle in the other, a Ghost Pattern Strider. Oh, that's not good. Stalker knew at once what had happened. The Strider was equipped with a specialist long-range sniper rifle, an Evolution SR-9, which could fire multiple ammunition types, one of which was an electroshock round designed to blind and disable armored fighting vehicles, AFVs, by frying optical and guidance systems, the SR-9 being accurate enough to put fire on a target out to well beyond 3 kilometers. as he watched the advancing Strider, frozen in the moment. For the first time he could recall in his military career, he felt not only fear, as fear was an old companion of all veterans, but for the first time he also felt doubt. He knew that with both Devastators now disabled and the two SLAP launchers expended, what they had left simply wouldn't be enough. The other two SLAP launchers in the unit had been lost when they were crushed by the first Strider, which grabbed the man who had been carrying them in the first attack, and a handful of remaining 50mm heat grenades simply wouldn't do it. All hope seemed lost. The Strider was almost upon them, and in desperation Stalker opened fire with his impulse rifle. The rest of the unit had seen it too, and had opened fire, the air filling with blue impulse fire and the heavy tracers from the 20mm cannon. But the well-armored machine was shrugging off the fire being thrown at it, and in response was charging its plasma rifle, preparing to unleash its lethal firepower. From an intersecting street on the right side of the main road, just as the enemy Strider passed, a dark blur hurtled out, crashing into the speeding enemy machine. To Stalker's amazement, it was a jet-black Strider, and it bore an inverted pyramid and skull emblem balanced on an image of Strider's hand on each shoulder guard that marked it as belonging to the Terra Nova's elite Strider recon force. If that wasn't spectacular enough, what happened next was grabbing the enemy Strider with one arm, in which it too grasped a plasma rifle. The Dark Strider, using its free hand, ripped the head off the Red Legion piloted machine's cockpit and shoved its hand inside and fired its arm-mounted flamethrower. The Red Legion machine went completely berserk, and the Terra Nova Strider let it go, boosting clear as the Red Strider began to tear itself and several buildings to pieces. It took a moment for what had just happened to register. Then the comm net lit up with the ecstatic cheering of the men who only seconds before had seen death coming for them. D and Stalker let them go, feeling the same themselves, but still too relieved by their sudden deliverance to react. The Terra Nova Strider landed a short distance from the disabled tanks, and D was the first to speak the pilot over the commnet. "You're a sight for sore eyes, Alpha Zulu 83, he said, reading the Strider's ID tag. "Looks like I got here just in time. You guys seem like you have had a bit of Strider trouble," said the pilot, motioning with the plasma rifle to the crushed wreckage of the first enemy Strider. "Yeah, these Reds just don't seem to understand the Terra Nova at all, 83. The pilot laughed. "I should be thanking you. I was tracking that Strider for the past hour, trying to get close enough to engage, and then he headed for you like a moth to the flame, and I finally got my chance. We're here to help 83. You feel free to drop by any time, and make sure you run into us later. A few guys down here want to buy you a beer. I'll be collecting them too, don't you worry." That brought a cheer from the others. "I've cleared the area for the next 5 clicks all the way up to the converter. There's no sign of any more enemy to your front, Epsilon." "Roger that. We will move up to the converter and await support." "Very good. I will give you perimeter protection until you are in place." "Thanks for that, Zulu 83, and again for the assist. Was a thing of beauty." With the remaining Devastator being driven visually, directed by the assault troops, and protected by their Dark Guardian, the small, dusty, battered convoy moved off at the tank's best speed, heading for the base of the converter. As they moved, D called TACCOM. "TACCOM, this is Epsilon 2-1. Epsilon 2-1, this is TACCOM, send. TACCOM, we have encountered heavy resistance along phase line Zurich, including 2 Striders. Both are down. Please confirm 1 kill by Alpha Zulu 83. "Roger that, Epsilon 2-1, confirmed your last. What is your status?" "We are showing your count as -1. TACCOM, our count is confirmed -1, and of the 2 deltas, 1 is down, the other is combat ineffective. We are currently moving to our objective and will hold position there awaiting the arrival of Sierra Uniform. Say again, supporting units, over." "All received and understood, Epsilon 2-1. Good work. Expect supporting element call sign India 99 to be arriving ASAP, over." "Roger that, TACCOM, all received, Epsilon 2-1 out." D switched to the commnet. "Heads up, guys, we will take and hold our objective and wait for elements of the 9th Infantry Division, which should relieve us within a couple of hours." Traveling the last 5 clicks was uneventful, but took almost an hour due to the damaged Devastator. Once in place, they quickly secured the surrounding buildings and set up the only heavy weapon they had, the Omega Men's 20mm cannon on a rooftop, and with the massive gray wall of the converter for a backdrop settled in, watching for any sign of the enemy and patiently waiting for the arrival of the relief force from the 9th Infantry. Within an hour, a column of wheeled Warthog APCs, escorted by a pair of prowlers, came down the road and pulled up, spilling out infantry. Stalker came down from a rooftop to greet the infantry commander as D was busy on the TACnet. He noticed their shocked expressions. "Do I really look that bad?" "Geez, man," said one private. "You look like you had a hell of a fight getting here. We saw wrecked Striders on the road and everything." Stalker walked up to the infantryman, dressed in his standard battle armor, dust mask, and shoulder-slung IW-30. Stalker looked twice the size and a full foot taller in the EEA suit, and twice as intimidating from all the battle damage and dust. All in a day's work for the Terra Nova private. "Where's your CO?" "3 vehicles back, specialist," the private said a little too quickly. Stalker looked him up and down, and then nodded. As he walked away, Stalker heard the soldier say to another, "Did you see that guy?"